So let's start. First of all, warm welcome to all of you this evening. And it is with great pleasure that we are hosting this webinar for you tonight. Of course, please mute, that would be great. And first, a practical note. We have translation available in several languages. So we have Greek, Polish, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese. You can click the globe button below and select the translation channel if you would like to use that. Since we have a small group tonight, it would be good to know who is here. So if you feel like it, please type your name, your organization, and perhaps also your role in the chat, so everyone can scroll and see. And if you have a specific interest or expectation for this webinar, you can, of course, also add it to your text. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. Meanwhile, I will continue introducing what we are going to talk about tonight. Of course, as you have seen, the topic is the energy transition as a means of curbing the climate crisis, but more specifically, we are going to dive into the question of how to support and build an energy system that is based on renewable energy in a very progressive, fair, and environmentally sound way. Today is actually also the start of International Energy Poverty Action Week. You can follow what is happening with that on Twitter with the hashtag Right to Energy. My name is Sanne van Keulen, and I will be your webinar host for this evening. I have a background in the environmental and the climate movement, and I'm currently also involved in our Dutch Green Party, GroenLinks, as a candidate for the Amsterdam City Council for the coming elections that are taking place in 3.5 weeks. I think, as you heard just now, this session will also be recorded. So just so you are aware of that. For our program tonight, we have invited two top-notch speakers, I might say, who will guide you through the issue at stake from their own experience and expertise. And our first speaker that you can also see here on video is Alex Kaat. He's also a Dutchie. And Alex has been involved in policies dealing with the energy transition, including wind and solar, for many years now. And to make sure wind and solar projects are well integrated into local communities and do not harm or even improve nature. Alex has been strongly involved in developing a code of conduct together with the energy companies and local communities and also the environmental and nature organizations. So he will share what he has done there. Of course, he will also touch upon how to deal with potential negative impacts and resistance. Alex, just out of interest, you support projects and organizations that work on different renewable energy technologies. So what kind of projects are for you the most fun and energizing to work on? Can you tell?
Yeah, sure. It's always fun to work on a very general level regarding climate change, because everybody is, of course, concerned about climate change. And if you want to go one level deeper, it's also fun to work in policies that support wind or solar or other technologies, because most people support that. And when it comes down to individual projects, it gets harder and harder, and sometimes also challenging. Sometimes great, and sometimes very frustrating, because everybody wants more sustainable energy, but not in the backyard.
Yeah, that's definitely something we'll discuss in more depth today. So thanks for that. Then let's go to our second speaker. Her name is Antonia Proka, and she's from REScoop.eu. Wondering if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but you can correct me in a bit. For those of you who do not know, REScoop.eu is the European Federation of Citizen Energy Cooperatives, and Antonia will mainly share her elaborate knowledge and insights on how cooperatives can play a crucial role in making sure the new energy system is working for the benefit of communities. Antonia also did her PhD at Drift, the Research Institute for Transition Science, focusing on a project with the aim of enabling smart energy systems. And I was really wondering, how did you come from a PhD on smart energy systems to your current role at REScoop, supporting cooperatives? What was your journey?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have afterwards. Well, maybe I can say that my PhD, the type of research that I did was the so-called action research. So we did not do research like me being somehow behind closed doors in an ivory tower or whatever. No, I was really in the field. I was trying to research and at the same time support the energy communities, the different models back then. I was examining the impact of how they can actually transform the system that we're in. So that was, in a sense, it was not too crazy of a path to follow from studying, analyzing. Then I'm now moving more towards like the position where I try to support fully, let's say, energy communities in really getting this change really forward. We need to have the transition happening as soon as possible. So now I'm fully on it.
That sounds great, and thanks for that explanation. It sounds cool, also action research. Before we dive into your presentations, I just want to quickly go over the program and also some small practical issues. Alex will give the first presentations, and there are also some polls included that will pop up in your screen. You can answer them, and then after some minutes, we'll see the results. So we can get a feel of what you're thinking or what you are experiencing in your home context. If you have questions during or after the presentation, they are super welcome. You can click on the Q&A button below and just type your question. And the fun thing about that Q&A function is that you can also vote on questions that other people have posed. So if you really like a question, you can vote on it and it becomes, you know, it comes up higher. So that's a nice function. If you have any technical issues, you can use the chat. So we're not using the chat for the Q&A. That's, I think, important for you to know. And Rihanna is there in the background for tech support if you need it. So there will be someone helping you if you need support. After Alex's presentation, we'll just do a quick round of clarification questions. So not a big Q&A, we'll just do that in the end after Antonia has spoken. So just so you know. And I think around 8 o'clock or a bit earlier, we'll jump into the Q&A, so you have plenty of time to ask your questions and to have some discussions. Without further ado, I want to introduce you to the first poll and check if it's all working out well. Rihanna, can you put up the first poll question? So the question is, what do you think is the biggest challenge for implementing new renewables in your country? And in the meantime, I'm also scrolling through the chat to see who's here. And I think we have quite a diverse audience, so that's nice to see. And also some people who know the speakers or who know each other. So that's great. I think, Rihanna, we can close the poll, right? Yes, thank you. And I think you all see the same as I do. So community resistance is really a big one here. So it's good that we have a program in which we really address this, but also the environmental impacts comes out quite high. And then the other options are a little bit less, but I think this gives a good image of what you are experiencing in your local context. So we can address that either in the presentations or in the Q&A. So after this first poll, it's all working. That's great. I want to give the floor to you, Alex, and you will, I think Rihanna has your slides. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sanne. And I assume I get now to see my presentation, or?
Sorry, give me 1 second. I was trying to set up interpreters at the same time. But I will share it now.
You know, I just start talking. Good evening, all. I'm Alex. I'm from the Netherlands. Used to work for the Green Party, GroenLinks, as Sanne is involved in quite some time ago. Worked for an international NGO, Wetlands International. Worked for an energy company and for several years in ECO, and now work for different customers as long as they are pushing for the energy transition, and then I'm happy to work for them. So also the solar sector, and in the past also the wind sector and VEA, and also for municipalities. Ariana is still trying to get my presentation started.
Sorry, 1 second. I thought I was sharing it, but apparently not. All right, there we go.
No. Oh, maybe.
Okay. I think
Is it not visible?
yeah, it is visible, but
okay.
you have to click through to Alex's presentation. But if it doesn't work, maybe Alex, you have the presentation. Ah, great. Thanks.
Ah, there
Perfect.
I am. Next slide. Yeah. And I introduced myself as well, so then you can skip the next slide as well, Rihanna. Thank you. Well, that's some of my employers and my that I have at the moment. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I live in Bunnik, a small city in the middle of the country, close to Utrecht. And there are big plans for a solar farm there. But many of the people, and also, of course, the politicians, objected it because it said, well, we lose all the nature if you make it all glass with solar panels, and the soil will be dead and all the birds will be gone. So a plan was made for a very green park, with lots of space between all the units, and with lots of biodiversity and trees. And now the farmer next door, he fears too many insects and birds from such a green park. He doesn't want that because it will disturb his farmlands with all these herbs. And the same parties were concerned about too little biodiversity, and now concerned by too much biodiversity, and again objected the plan. If you go to the next slide. And that's a typical case that you see a lot. People use arguments, but not very rational, like the issue of windmills and killing birds. Well, yes, it does happen, definitely. And there are many plans to prevent that with radar systems and the way the turbines look like. So they can prevent a lot by doing that. But still, people keep on using this argument, although cats collision with cars is much a bigger problem. Next slide. And the same we have with noise. There's a lot about noise and windmills, so it's now investigated. And the noise impact of more wind turbines is microscopic. It's so small, and it can't be attributed to the nuisance that people really experience. They will have lots and lots more noise from the planes in our country and from traffic. So it was investigated that more the anger of people make them suffer. Like this very nasty neighbor, this very ugly man. If you hear him, you already, there he is again with this nice couple next to you who always brings you tea. If you hear something from them, it sounds always nice. That's the same with these disturbances. It's very much the association that people have with it, that they're very sensitive to it. If you go to the next slide. So we have to realize that there are many disturbances. And when you talk about traffic noise, it's much more. So when people complain about wind and noise, you say, okay, well, maybe in our country, we should raise the bar for what we for noise. So that means that windmills can't make so much noise. There should be more distance of houses, but the same should apply for roads, isn't it? And for the airport, isn't it? That it should not make so much noise or else should close down. No, of course not. No, that's, we don't want that to happen. So it's not very rational. If you go to the next slide. It is Machiavelli, you all know him. He's a very cynical man, of course, from the 16th century. But in fact, what he said, if you want to change something, it's always very, very difficult. You find very lousy supporters and on a lukewarm support, and very hefty enemies who always oppose change. Change is hard. Go to the next one. So to get support for renewables, you have always an uphill battle to fight, and you have to do more. People demand more. They want something for the people next door that they also benefit, and they want very high standards. And my question is, the first one, renewable projects should cause as little nuisance as possible, and should do everything to make people benefit in the area. Just do more than normally. And the second one is our renewable energies should, just like all the infrastructures and disturbances, have fulfill the law, but should not be more. So there should not be an additional higher bar for renewable energies. So the second is no additional demands, and the first one is yes, we should expect more from that. Okay, Sanne takes over now.
There are not too many people voting yet, I see. I'm not sure why that is, but feel free to, if everything goes according to plan, then you'll see the poll popping up in your screen, and then you can vote. And I think the result now is also visible to everyone. So there are 2 voters for the second statement. That's not too much, but
if people say the same as I see, then they don't see the whole sentences because it's cut off. So that makes it harder to vote.
Yes, I think we'll just try for the next poll, Alex. Yeah. And move on to the slides. And I will actually share your screen because there are some difficulties with screen sharing. So let me just try.
Well, there's only 2 voters, but if 100% does not want additional demands, then it makes the life of the developers of sustainable energies very easy, because you don't have to care about people next door making funds for local communities and get them involved and shared ownership, because then you just fulfill the law. If you build a nuclear power plant, nobody's going to talk about shared benefits and shared ownership. Okay, the poll can go, and this can be on presentation modes, and you can go 2 slides further if you are able to.
This one?
Yeah, more down. Next one.
This one, Alex, or?
Yeah, I just don't see anything changing. Maybe that's because what I see. So maybe you see something different. But
yeah, I see the slides clicking through. So oh, that's really annoying.
We don't see it.
Okay. That sucks. Wait, let me try again.
Maybe, yeah, and maybe try to put it full screen. Sometimes it doesn't really follow. It has happened before.
That's interesting, right? 2 years of webinars and online meetings and still. Is this, can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah, bit back, too back.
Okay.
Next, back. You're very far now. Yeah, make this one. Next one. How to deal with opposition. Next one. To the right, you see what people say, and when they speak up, and they say, well, climate change isn't that certain, so why put everywhere windmills? They talk about birds. They talk about harming food production if you put solar panels there. They talk about that they know for sure that there are much better solutions compared to windmills and solar farms, for instance, nuclear power plants. They know exactly how the energy system works and that no wind and sun cannot meet demands, because if the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, we are all in darkness. And they're all that over sure. And it's very tempting to react to all those objections and to say, no, that's not true. It doesn't kill so many birds. And no, we have good batteries and we can store energy. That's not the case. What you find out is that the left is what they really think. And they are convinced that there is a hidden agenda because the people moving in earn lots and lots of money with taking land over from farmers and putting their wind turbines or solar panels. And it harms, in fact, the way of living. And it also states that their way of living was apparently wrong. And the others from outside are coming in and they are just dealing with it. It's that annoyance. It is very much us and they feeling, which is very strong. And then they find the arguments why that is a very stupid idea. Next one. So you have to deal with those arguments. These are very rational arguments. Again, what are the main concerns about solar and wind? And you will know them. Of course, wind, landscape, noise, birds, lights that are going around at night to prevent the planes to bash into a wind turbine. Solar, well, causing dead soils because everything is covered, and pollution, and they all have benefit sharing. Who is going to gain? Who is not going to gain? So next one, yeah. Yeah, two contexts. It's for offshore winds with lots of parties. We agreed. I worked on this when I worked for this energy company and to pull on this. And all the environmental organizations supported it. And also the organization of local communities who are often object wind programs. And we agreed, if you go to the next slide, it's a very much a process thing, because you can't exactly rule out all the concerns. It's very difficult to say, yeah, we're going to build a windmill that doesn't make any noise, that it doesn't exist. So you have to make agreements on that it is far away from houses, and if you are close by, that you get some compensation, etc. It's very much focusing on a process involving people from the very first beginning, that not suddenly overwhelmed. And also benefit sharing. Every megawatt hour that's produced, we put 50 cents in the basket. And that's for the local community. And it's for them together to decide what is the best way of spending this. And also aiming for 50% local ownership of any new projects. Not always feasible, because sometimes it is about many millions. And if nobody is hardly living there, that's of course not feasible, but at least something that you try to achieve. Next one. Same for sun. A few years later, with again many nature organizations and also community-based organizations. Next one. And that one is very much more dealing with the physical elements as well, guaranteeing that there is more biodiversity once you establish a solar fields, which is easy on the Dutch agricultural lands because it's completely dead monoculture, but still it's a good thing to promise. Guarantees no pollution, guarantees also 50% ownership, and involving people from the very first beginning. So this is all developed. Next one. The good question is, did this help? Are we now everywhere welcomed if you develop a solar park or a wind turbine? Now, next one. Bits. You can't say no. You cannot say yes. Oh yes, it's no everywhere great. No, definitely not. It's a proof of good practice for local governments. For the professionals in local government, they know, hey, this company is following this code of conduct. At least they do it right. And if they don't, they have internally also a mechanism that is addressed. There's also no objections anymore from the green NGOs that used to be very concerned of all the land that was going away and used even in more natural agricultural lands. Agricultural organizations even refuse to talk about the code of conduct. They're very against the use of agricultural lands, for instance, for solar fields. And that's the most likely area to develop those. There's not much land in the Netherlands, at least, that is bare, maybe in Spain or so, but not in the Netherlands. Everything is used for agricultural land, or you live there. The houses and roads. There's nothing, or it's a natural area which you want to touch anyway. So they didn't even want to talk, and every project that started, the National Agriculture Organization makes objections and threatens to go to court every time. It definitely doesn't lead to support from local residents. But the most impact is when local residents groups give support, because they have the feeling it's more us instead of them, that they do feel involved, that they do see benefits coming to their community, that they are involved in getting maybe also the opportunity to be partly owner of the park. And then it completely turns around if you really achieve that local people have the feeling it's their development for them and helps them, and not just some outsider, not a foreign company that's just as a grasshopper comes down, takes the land and just disappeared again. Next slide. Local ownership, 50% is agreed on with many parties in the Netherlands as something to try to achieve. It's a very central thing. It has a lot of benefits. It makes people locally feel responsible. It's their part because they become owner. Very much a feeling of us instead of them. It leads automatically, in that case, to political support. But that's not always a success story. Local ownership is about millions, and people want also some revenues from that. And for a developer, it makes it more expensive. That can be worth it, definitely. That should not be a reason not to do it, but at least the energy transition becomes a bit more expensive. That's fine, I think, for myself. It's possible for all energy projects. There are energy projects that really have an investment of hundreds of millions. I mean, if 50% should be owned, that means that people have to invest at the beginning this amount, but that's impossible. And some areas are so too sparsely populated. One constraint that some see, why only wind and solar? Why can somebody develop an industry? Can you go back? And develop a big anything. Why can a farmer use lots of pesticides on the land and nobody talks about a fund for the local residents who live around this land that's very polluted, and when the wind blows you almost smell the pesticides? Why is that not happening? Why just picking out wind and solar should do something for the local residents? Many are pushing now for nuclear power plants. Nobody will talk about shared ownership, local ownership. And the last one is the most difficult one, I think. Local ownership means that you own a park, you invest and get very good revenues from it. Who can invest? Mostly rich people who want to invest, green people. So often you get the issue that in the south of a city, near to a poor area, a wind farm is developed. And in the north of the city, where the richer areas are, where people still vote for the Greens and are well educated and have good jobs, they invest in that. And that is not automatically leading to support to the local people. Or that they always say, oh yeah, those Greens, there they live, there they invest, but that's not me. And I'm the one who can't invest in this. And there are all kinds of other mechanisms that you don't invest, but you get some benefits. Maybe those are better than just local ownership. Next slide. So, yeah, that's all again.
So Rihanna, can you put up the poll? Hopefully it works
A,
now for more people.
local ownership is a great idea. B, yeah, that will be just for the happy few who are able to become owner. So there are better ways. Just give the money to somebody. Okay. Well, at least that's very good. At least two sides to it, because there are definitely two sides to the same story.
Yeah, so the answers to the poll are a bit more diverse than they seemed at first.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I would feel hard to vote. Sometimes it works, but it's definitely not a key that opens every door. It's definitely not a win for all situation. Okay, can we go continue? Or are we waiting? Yeah. Putting down wind farms and solar panels and solar fields is actually the easy part of the energy transition. There's lots of debate about, but it's easier to solve the issue of a solar park that is 2 miles away from your house, where you even can wonder, why did you ever bother that it's there? I mean, what is your point? It becomes much, much harder when you want to enter as a government the house of people. And that is at the moment in the Dutch situation, more 3 times the emissions are coming from housing. This heating and cooling in the southern countries is a lot more energy than the whole electricity sector is using up. Heating and cooling. In our country, natural gas. Some countries sometimes coal and brown coal electricity, but at least to solve that, you have to enter the house. Next slide. So it's a very different issue compared to wind and solar, but again, you get fierce opposition to collective programs. Collective programs, that's what I mean, that the government moves in and tells, well, we have here a natural gas network. It's at the end of its age, and it's nonsense to replace that for, again, a network for pipes and air tubes through the whole neighborhood for natural gas, because you have to stop natural gas use. You have to go for climate neutral. That's impossible with natural gas. But they offer central heating, and they offer also the with support to insulate your whole house. And that is a big impact on your house, of course. And you have suddenly to cook on not on gas anymore, but on other system, induction or whatever. And it can be cheaper and more effective, but it, again, you see a lot of distrust about the cost, about the necessity. If there's a hidden agenda, they say it will just be the same price, but I'm sure there's the opposition is very strong and frustrates many programs in neighborhoods. Although, you know, if you can't really decide to take the whole gas out of a neighborhood and just wait, people voluntarily take steps, it becomes much more expensive, because you can't come with one big program for central heating. You can't come with one big program to renew the whole neighborhood and insulate all the roofs once together. But still, the opposition was that fierce that now with the new government, it's backed by a majority in parliaments. They go very strongly for the voluntary scheme. Tax, make natural gas a bit more expensive, voluntary scheme, and also a lot of subsidies for individual households, housing associations and landlords to insulate those houses or to buy a heat pump for that. It will be much, much more expensive than the collective program. And you know that many people won't move to renewables, and it will be very complex. Next slide, please. And the challenge is that this big voluntary program with lots and lots of subsidies to seduce people actually is good for people like many of us, maybe in this call, at least for me. I mean, if you can afford it to invest for at first, and you get subsidies later, and you invest also in a climate neutral house with a very low energy bill, I mean, that's great. It will be cheaper for you. But to be able to invest at the first stage and also to organize this all, and also find a good entrepreneur who's able to do the work in your house. Oh, it's very complicated. And to call for this very complex subsidies. I mean, it took me 3 evenings to fill in all the forms and to understand what I had to fill in. So it's very much for the rich people and the good, well-educated people. At the same time, we see the prices. That is the right diagram on the right. You see this, how expensive natural gas now is, and will be much more expensive if Putin decides to invade the Ukraine. And we see also how cheap and cheaper and cheaper all the renewables are getting. So the old story, renewable is expensive, and I don't want that. It's not true again anymore in the future. Next slide. So it will be that the rich people are not better off. Oh, Rust.
Sorry, Alex.
But at the same time, we see that natural gas getting more and more expensive. It was more than a year ago, it was 20 cents on the spot market for a cubic meter of gas. It's now almost €1, and it will be in 2030, I expect about 55 cents. It will never be cheap again. The taxes on energy are increasing because the government wants to get off of natural gas. There's an obligation that green gas should be mixed in the whole gas mix. That is definitely more expensive. The EU is aiming to install also a carbon dioxide fee, the ATS, on also the housing sector, and the VAT about that. Hey, the slide doesn't go down anymore, but when you would be able to see the last button row, you would see that natural gas will be twice as expensive as we used to and be used to it. So the poorer people, and often people object to change to renewables because they assume it's more expensive. In 10 years' time, they will have very, very high energy bills, and they have not been able to invest in it and to invest in their houses. And definitely tenants, they depend on their landlords to invest in their houses. But landlords are not quite reluctant, but yeah, the benefits are for the ones that pay the bill. And that's not the landlord, that's the tenant. So there we see a big division that, rich, well-educated, smart people, who really make steps, are not just doing it for the environment, but the end will be also cheaper off, and the poor people will have really a problem. Next slide. And that's a bit of a weird political dimension. I think if you pull again, it will be more, yeah. So we see that the Greens, Social Democrats, Christian Democrats, Liberal Democrats are all saying, yes, we should be able to get whole neighborhoods with state support off natural gas and onto renewables. But it is objected by not even left or right, but more populist parties saying no. Socialist Party, conservative parties, populist right parties all find themselves to block real steps towards the energy transition. And yeah, that's a strange situation that for the Greens, you almost have to push for something where the socialists say, well, you're very asocial. You just forcing people to do investment that is not in their benefit for now. Next slide.
Yes, Alex, just being mindful of time.
I'm almost done. I think
okay,
it's
great.
done. Yeah.
Cool. So here's another poll.
So then is the big call, where many, especially also in have to deal with households, should never be forced, not be forced to quit fossil heating. And these steps should be always voluntarily. To end fossil heating. You can't be waiting for everyone to agree. Sometimes in neighborhoods you say, we're going to get your house off fossils. And because else it will never happen. And it's also a bit in their own benefits. That's B, forcing more.
Yeah, so I'll just
and polls are divided, it's always good, because else the question is a bit stupid.
I still see some votes coming in. I think we can show the results. And I also see a question coming in the Q&A, which we'll look at in a bit.
Yes. I think we're done, Son, after this one.
Okay.
So you're concerned about the time, of course.
Well, in that case, we're right on schedule, Alex. Thank you very much for this presentation. And I just want to ask people if there are like questions of clarifications at the moment. I see one question coming in. We'll do a big round of Q&A after Antonia has presented, but I just want to make sure if there's anything unclear that you want to ask Alex, feel free to put it in the Q&A. There's a big question to you, Alex. Okay, I think the first question we'll do in the end after Antonia's presentation. And then there's a question, well, it is a fact that the noise and light emissions are very low. They are distributed a lot more than, for example, compared to large thermal power plants. If we assume climate neutrality in Germany by 2045, we need a lot of wind energy. That also means a vast area of Germany will be exposed to noise and light emissions. Don't you think we need additional environmental regulations on wind energy? Can you say something about that, Alex?
Oh, sure, I love to. I mean, there are many sources of noise, and even if there were many sources, why would you add additional requirements for a wind farm compared to a road? It's all measured in decibel, just the normal units, and you can say 50 decibel at the side of your house, that's the maximum. And it doesn't matter if it's a wind turbine that is making that sound, and or a road. And they also add to that if the noise has a frequency and is going up and down, of course, everybody knows it's more annoying. So you can add it as well in the whole system. At the end, you should, I think, have one set of regulation, because else it becomes a part of your preferences or of lobby. At the airport says, yeah, you make so much noise, but we are very important. So for us, the bar should be lower. And in industry, yeah, we give jobs. So for us, and they say, no, wind energy is more important. That should have a lower bar, or the opposite around. And I think it would be very good to have uniform rules, like we have uniform laws also for people, what you can't do and cannot do, and not specific groups that have suddenly a title law for what they allow to do in society. I think it applies also for these cases. So I would say no.
Yeah, and you already said that there are quite often like double standards, for renewable energy projects. If you compare it to like a big distribution center or data center or some other, impactful projects for the local communities. I don't see any additional questions. Well, there is one coming in. I think we'll also put that in the Q&A after Antonia's presentation, and then first move over to you, Antonia. Also, with your presentation, we'll start with a small poll.
Yes.
To see what people are thinking. So what barriers to local involvement do you think your community faces most? And if everything goes correctly, you can now vote.
Let's see, I'm very curious what the participants say about the barriers.
Yes, more votes are coming in now. So just give them a couple of more seconds before we move on to the results. Yes, I think we can close the poll and show the results. Does this surprise you, Antonia?
I mean, I have to say that I'm still interested to see that I'm always, let's say, surprised to see that we still need to talk about awareness raising and knowledge. So that is kind of surprising. For the rest, yeah, I think this is to be expected, that the policy level and then the costs, both in time and financial resources, that's always kind of a thing that comes into the picture.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
Will you share your screen?
Yes, let me
Great.
do this.
Let's
So
hope
I'm
it
gonna
works.
yeah, exactly. Let's see. So I hope that you see my screen. I hope that you see the full screen also at the tech check. So yes, I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. Actually, I will be sharing a few things about community energy. So I will be focusing a little bit on some good practices, and yeah, before I actually focus on the topic, just a few words for those of you that may not know REScoop.eu, the European Federation of Citizen Energy Cooperatives. We are based in Brussels and in Antwerp, and we represent about 1,900 REScoops of the community of energy communities, meaning that we actually represent the voices of more than 250,000 citizens that are actually involved in these citizen energy cooperatives. We are based, as I said, Brussels in Antwerp, and we are also members in terms of our association. We participate in Cooperatives Europe, Right to Energy Coalition. This week is the week of energy poverty. We talk about energy poverty. We participate in Community Power Coalition, Coalition for Energy Saving. So we try to, let's say, join forces with other initiatives, other organizations that try to support the energy transition. We were actually established back in 2013. We were the result, let's say, of a research project, actually, REScoop 2020. And here is kind of one of the first visuals that we were using at that time, the energy transition to energy democracy. And the shift then from centralized, fossil-based, commercial, profit-making enterprises to decentralized, renewables, community-driven organizations that focus on the local benefit. And this is still the key of our activities. And I was actually thinking, okay, we are here today gathered to discuss, okay, doing renewables right. So how do we do renewables right? So I was thinking, why don't we go back to the basics? For us, the basics are actually the 7 cooperative principles. We actually define also what an energy cooperative is through these 7 principles. The legal entity is not really important. It could be energy cooperative, a cooperative, it could be a small business, it could be an NGO, different type of legal forms. What is important is the fact that local initiatives follow these principles, that to do renewables right, we say that people should be able to join voluntarily. They should have the democratic control. They need to be autonomous and independent, these initiatives, and the focus should be on education, training, and information. We see it as a principle, actually, the collaboration and cooperation between different kind of cooperatives. And the key that underlines all this, or maybe brings together all these different principles, is the concern for community. I will later share some examples, and I will try to show how these principles actually translate into projects. We were happy to see, I have to say, before I dive, let's say, into the cases, that, of course, this was not a surprise. This is key of our work. We're here based in Brussels to also be close to the institutions, so that we are the voice of the energy communities, the energy cooperatives. So we can see in the slide here that there is kind of an quite of a good alignment between the principles that I described and what is in now the definitions of energy communities. With the Clean Energy for All Europeans, the package, we see that a lot of these things have actually been taken on board. So when this happened, when we have finally the acknowledgement of renewable energy and citizen energy communities, this was a big thing for us, because it was finally the right was recognized, the right to participate in the energy market on a non-discriminatory basis, the right for us, for the communities, to have enabling frameworks to proceed their activities in the energy field, and then this, in a sense, maybe you've seen this picture, is that we finally see that the whole landscape, let's say the playing field, has changed. It's not authorities and market players anymore. We see a new player entering, the community player. So we also need to remember that when it comes to energy communities, let's say what we have achieved is we have achieved to get definitions that focus on the how, the principles that I described earlier. The what is more open. We can do more things. I will describe later in my presentation, but the key is the focus on the participation, voluntary and open participation, the effective control by the members, the benefits. I will try to share a few things we also heard previously from Alex, the key environmental, economic, and social benefits to the community through these projects. I wanted to share with you, this is a more recent survey, research that has been done, commissioned by the European Climate Foundation. And we actually show that the results show that 61% of Europeans would be it would be likely for them to join an energy cooperative if there was one established in their community. We also saw, even better, than 86% of all Europeans actually support new wind and solar projects in the local area. Here, we need to clarify that this support is not just like, okay, I will imagine whoever comes and develop a project, but of course the idea is that people can actually participate in these projects and get the direct benefit from these projects. I wanted to share with you also, because I said that, that on the definition level we have achieved a lot. Now is the time that at the European level, I mean, we have managed to get the definitions that we wanted, or we were quite close, maybe. But now the time is to see how these definitions are actually transposed at the different member states. And we have, as a member of the Community Power Coalition, we have created also the transposition tracker. You can check, I have the link also on the slide, and you can see how the different countries are actually doing when it comes to transposing these definitions. And with this, I want to share a few good examples of energy communities in Europe. I will start from the Netherlands, where I chose these two examples. One example, the Zuiderlicht from Amsterdam. This is a kind of, maybe, if I may, good example that can be replicated in multiple different contexts. Is the example of a cooperative focusing on developing solar projects, focusing on engaging local communities, organizing local events. I still remember the Energie ontbijten, the breakfasts, talking about energy topics, really focusing on awareness raising, and mobilizing people, making it easy for people to join energy community projects and cover in this way part of their energy needs. The other example is the example of Delta Wind. In this particular case, we see, I always like referring to this because we see that this community energy cooperative actually has developed one of the biggest today, at least I think, community-owned wind park, the wind park Kramer, where we have the collaboration to energy cooperatives, joint forces, Delta Wind and Geowind, and they actually managed to develop this quite impressive 100 megawatt wind project. Then I wanted to share some examples from Belgium, because we also heard there was also the question, how do we do this? What about the local ownership? These examples are examples where an energy cooperative collaborates with a local authority in the region, or maybe the other way around, I would even say, because in the cases that I have here, the local authorities were actually the ones that invited the citizen initiatives to actually develop the project. So in the case of the first example, I have EcoPower in the particular project wind farm of 4 wind turbines. The municipalities of Amel and Bullingen, they have actually had the clear prerequisite in the tender to have citizen participation. And then in this case, the project, the wind farm is developed, and then 50% of the project is owned by the citizens through EcoPower, and 50% is owned by the municipalities. Of course, citizens are also part of the municipality, but you see what I mean, the shared development. The example of also Bovent is the example of a cooperative district heating network, where we have the shift to get rid of gas. And then Bovent there, the cooperative actually also was involved in developing the network, involving also private homes, public buildings, small, medium enterprises to get off the gas grid. And then the other example I have there is from Halle, Power. There, the focus was on a maybe simpler project, LED. The interesting thing here is that maybe, I don't know, in some context, we see that the local authorities or the public anyhow institution is the one that gives financial support to the energy communities to take action. In this case, we see the reverse. We see Power actually was the one that actually gave a loan to the municipality to shift the lights in public street, the public street lighting. I have also here the example, I wanted to share with you the example of Sifnos, energy cooperative. They have the plan. I have to say that they still struggle with developing the plan that they have, hybrid wind and pump hydro storage. Long discussion about the project and why they're still struggling with legislation. A lot of things are not, let's say, aligned positively towards them. But I wanted to focus on the fact that actually this cooperative has been quite active in informing the local community about all the things involved around wind energy, because we hear all the concerns or the questions or the fears. And actually the cooperative, the particular cooperative, has been the one that really facilitated the installation of 2 wind turbines on the island of Sifnos. And those wind turbines are not owned by the cooperative, are actually wind turbines that belong to the public power company. But it was the energy cooperative that actually took care of this communication and awareness raising campaign to explain and ease the concerns of the local citizens. And a good practice also here with Sifnos is the fact that the local municipality, the local authority, actually became part of the energy cooperative, and they are now together try to develop the projects that they wish to develop. Another example, I don't think that I would skip the the video, but I still have it on the slides for you to have a look, comes from Greece, Hyperion, and it's a virtual net metering project. Here we see that Hyperion, an energy cooperative, tries to actually give access to some people that may not be the typical, let's say, suspects of getting involved of an energy community. And with this whole virtual net metering, in short, is you consume by becoming member of an energy community, you can actually balance your electricity bill through the electricity that you are generating, not necessarily on your roof, but in another roof that an energy community has organized the project for this energy production to be made possible. Another case that I often refer to is the example of Mujeres con Energía from Spain. And here, the interesting thing is that this awareness, this education and training is not only to the wider community, is also for the members, the participants of these energy communities. The focus here is on women, to mobilize women. Is not only to become member of an energy community to have this benefit when it comes to the bill, for instance, but is the empowerment to actually take on the entire process of installing the solar panels on the respective roofs that they are selected. So we see that they get active in the broader value chain of energy projects. And here again, Som Energia that are behind, they have been also supporting this initiative, is an energy cooperative from Spain that has a couple of years, let's say, of experience, and they're supporting more and more energy cooperatives to take action. In Belgium, we also have, I mentioned the biopower also earlier. Here we have an initiative that strictly focuses on information provision to raise awareness and explain to people what can be done to save energy and to produce renewable energy. And this initiative goes with on the picture you see, with this type of little van to different neighborhoods, attracts attention and explains the process to the to the citizens, the local residents, often in vulnerable also areas. We also have the case of Kent Zonnestad, where beyond information, we also have capacity building. And the energy cooperative there tries to really explain, give the legal advice, and also the more practical, support the development of practical skills to help the initiatives, the local citizens, to reduce their energy consumption. Also, when it comes to the overall energy performance of the different households. Soft measures are also, of course, under focus, but also more hard, let's say, measures require the participation also of the homeowners. In the case of Brixton Energy, we have here a very good example where we see the energy communities mobilizing also the energy communities in getting more active in the local communities, getting more active on the energy field. They training, they're helping them learn, they focus on the youth, and they really provide also some internship programs. They really try to focus on enabling the vulnerable communities to actually really take actions on energy efficiency and production of energy, sustainable energy. We have also the example of from France, the Énergie Solidaire, where we have similarly the focus on supporting vulnerable communities. In this case, there is a specific solidarity fund where the members, the consumers actually of Enercoop, the cooperative, can give these small donations through their electricity bills, and the fund, the amount of resources that has been, is being collected, they can actually divert them to different small projects with a social element, trying to tackle the fuel poverty of some initiatives. This solidarity scheme is also not only in the local communities. We see Copernico similar. They have this kind of loans. In this case, it's a loan, it's not the donation, but they give money, the members of Copernico give money to Copernico to also develop these kind of projects with a kind of more social profile. Here I want to say that also actually Copernico is behind also Hyperion, another cooperative that I mentioned previously with the video, the net metering scheme. The idea here is that Copernico started itself receiving support from other established communities, and now being more advanced, it also provides support to other energy communities, energy cooperatives, to start and take action in the local areas. Very short, the example of Ireland, I wanted to keep it in because here we see, we also heard earlier, Alex mentioned that it's quite difficult to actually see what we can do, how we can tackle the issue of reducing the consumption at the household level when it comes to the building as such, the building stock. So here, the example of Ireland, the energy communities Tipperary, the cooperative is actually a cooperative that is taking care of this kind of renovation processes, insulation, upgrades and retrofitting. And they have the support of the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and they are in partnership with the regional energy agency and the community development company, and they have been actually retrofitting. They have been the numbers I have. We should actually update them, but until 2019, they had resulted with this operation of theirs into 8.8 gigawatt hours of energy saving. I should say that now, building on this kind of good lessons from this initiative, we have also a working group for our members of REScoop.eu that focuses on this, on citizen-led renovation, what we can do to reduce the energy consumption. And with this, I tried here and there to show how the different principles, let's say, apply in the projects that I described. But we have recently started also a project that we try to see the different impacts, social impact that energy communities have. And a few words, I will say a few words about the different kind of impact that we have encountered so far. We started with a literature review. We will now start also with the more specific workshops, but it was mentioned also earlier from Alex that by participating in energy communities, people get more this kind of responsibility. They have the ownership of they become proud to take action. We've seen that the people that get active in energy communities are actually more eager to be more active overall when it comes to local actions of sustainability, but beyond, we have more active citizenship, I would say. We've seen that, of course, there is quite of support. They become more vocal when it comes to the decision-making processes. They participate more actively in this. We see when it comes to the technology, for instance, when certain technologies are applied in local context with the participation of energy communities, there is an application, let's say, and directly we get the lessons and we apply the improved, let's say, design of the technology, the better project, let's say, in terms of the scale, in terms of the location of where the project is going to be developed. Maybe I wanted to mention this as last, because maybe sometimes we start by the financial benefit, but it's not the only, but still it's quite important that we've seen in France specifically. There was the research that we saw that when we have an energy project developed by an energy community, it leaves 2 to 8 times more local benefits compared to an energy project, renewable energy project developed by a third external, let's say, developer that is not connected to the neighborhood. So we can see the different impacts. So as I go towards my the closure of the presentation, I want to say also that within REScoop, we also have, when it comes to the gender element, the gender power working group to also empower more action towards gender just energy communities, to have not only more women on board, but to have the visions and ambitions of a woman and people of all genders represented in the energy transition and energy communities. We have presented also our ambition statements. You can have a look and see it online. This is open for members of REScoop.eu to also sign and join the working group. And as last, I want to say also that with UCINA, the European Citizen Energy Academy, a project that I'm also personally involved, we have recently launched Mooc, Renewable Energy Made Easy. For people who want to learn more about energy communities, we have collected very nice short videos. There's also assignments for people to get a little bit of better understanding how things can be done. And you can also have a look at the different reports we have on our website. And this is really the very last 2 slides. Sorry, Sanne, I'm closing. I'm not going to focus on this now with my presentation, but there are also a lot of good things that local authorities can actually do to support energy communities. I mentioned also in my presentation earlier by developing the tenders, dividing this kind of prerequisite, by joining the energy community, by creating the support, giving spaces. There are a lot of different things that local authorities can actually do to support the development of energy communities. And thank you very much. And I'm very looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yes. Thank you so much, Antonia. And I think it's really good to have all these examples and best practices, and also different technologies that you have cooperatives on, because I think the general image is, you know, either wind parks or solar roofs or whatever, but not like the LED lighting or heating or insulation. So that's really good to see. And I think you will share also, we will share your slides as well. So you can still look it up for people who are interested in the specific projects. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and feel free to add more questions so that we can have a little bit of a conversation here. But one of the things that I really want to know is actually, you know, we are currently in a situation with high gas prices, rising energy prices. So what can we concretely do or say to let people know that renewables can actually, you know, be a solution in this, or how can renewables be a solution for this? Because I think it's quite, you know, it's quite a pressing matter for many people.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to take it, or Alex. Go ahead, Antonia.
I can maybe start, and then Alex can, of course,
thanks.
Continue. There's a lot of things to say. I mean, I will just say that the fact that energy communities have actually been saying already for a couple of years now that if we want to be protected, let's say, by these price shocks for all sorts of reasons, we need to be producing our own renewables. We need to be actually developing projects that can help us have control of the price as well. It's included in all the different things that people can control. I will say that the current crisis make it even more clear the fact that citizens, we as citizens, but also as states, we should actually really get down to the nitty-gritty details of how we will be actually transitioning to renewable energy sources in order for us to be able to get the benefit that these resources bring us. And I can say that indeed it's not going to be, it doesn't mean that shifting from fossil fuels, we go to renewables, and then our electricity bill goes to zero. It does not exactly work like that. But at the same time, when we do compare the prices that we pay, we need to also consider all the different subsidies that are behind. So why do we keep on giving subsidies to people to cover their electricity needs through fossil fuels, and why don't we shift the subsidies towards a strategy that can enable them to go to renewables and reduce their use, the energy use?
Yes. Thank you, Antonia, for this. Alex, I can imagine that you have something to add to this.
Yes, it is a very, I think for the housing sector, people are now aware that natural gas is extremely expensive, and it leads a lot of people who want to get rid of natural gas and insulate a house. That works well. What's still not that clear, I think, to people is that renewables as an energy source are truly cheaper, because we are in a very fossil-based system, and renewables are offered by big companies who are allowed to pay not more than gas costs, but also not less. And that makes it that people don't see the bill really what energy costs. That's more for the energy companies who see what's more expensive and less expensive. And that makes it difficult. The other thing is that also many governments tend to support people who are dependent on fossils, because so many people are now suffering from the high energy prices. So there are all kinds of proposals in parliaments to make those people not pay the real high bill of fossil fuels that are very expensive. And it's very difficult. I've been talking today with our party members on how to deal with that. Should we go with that, or should we say, no, energy should be more expensive and then the fossil for sure, knowing that many people have no choice and pay the high gas bill? And that is a very difficult question to answer and to get the right answer on.
Yeah, and I think another difficult issue is, of course, that you mentioned earlier, Alex, also how to involve people that don't have the money to invest in renewable energy, how to involve them in renewable energy projects. And also, I guess that's a question for you also, Antonia, how to involve people with less money in cooperative forms.
This is something that we're trying to do, but first of all, we say that by getting a share, an energy, let's say, a share to an energy cooperative, we try to make this share as low as possible for people to have access to the benefits of joining an energy community. But also in the examples I shared, I had some examples where the focus was really supporting the vulnerable communities. We at the European level, we hear the leave no one behind. We say more, get everyone on board, you know, to really bring them on the energy transition and share the benefits, where we saw the example of energy consumers have a donation, offer a donation so that different projects can take place to support the more vulnerable. We saw the model where energy members of an energy cooperative offer loan to the energy community to actually develop projects. We also have, I didn't mention, I think, in my presentation, but we also have quite some examples where energy communities, they have a fund, like similarly what Alex mentioned previously, that per kilowatt hour produced, is next amount of cents go to a specific solidarity fund, and the community, the energy cooperative, I mean, decides what to do with these resources collected. And in a lot of cases, we have this fund being actually devoted to the vulnerable communities, people in the community, I mean.
Yeah, I think that community fund is also a great example on how to decide on what happens with the money. You can also find very, I think, democratic ways to decide on it. For instance, you know, to have a board that is, you know, not is selected from the local community with a draw, for instance. I just want to go to some of the questions that we have for you. One of the first was from, I think I would pronounce it Julia, how small energy communities from the ground can compete with huge energy monopolies. And it was also interesting that someone answered that, for instance, in Germany, there is actually a different tendering process for energy communities than for the bigger corporates. They have to do a more extensive tendering process. So it's really interesting to learn about these policies that, you know, have a different bar, so to say, for energy communities than for bigger companies. And maybe you can also add to that. I also see a question, let me see, about, oh, my screen is really weird. I don't know why. Someone asked, energy cooperatives are popular in Germany. They were a major driver of transition until now, although it seems corporates take over. Is the role of energy communities similarly strong in other EU countries? I think you also made a map, right, from REScoop. You did a mapping exercise. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We do have our community energy map, and this map, maybe I should clarify that it does not only show our members, it also shows different community initiatives across the EU. And indeed, I mean, in Germany, there is this long tradition, but luckily, I should say, we see the movement expanding also in different parts of Europe. And I'm not only I do not only refer to the Netherlands, Ireland, France. I mentioned some examples from Portugal, Spain. We are personally, I focus now on the project that I mentioned, EUCINA, European Citizen Energy Academy, where we focus in the Balkans and to try to support the development of energy communities there. And we see that in Greece, for instance, there are a lot of energy communities emerging, developing, more than 1,000, but we maybe need to discuss what is a real, authentic, let's say, energy community, but there is a lot of interest in any case. In Croatia, we also have activities, and now we also see that in the other countries, like in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we saw in Romania, there's also initiatives in Bulgaria. There are some first initiatives, let's say, and there is a lot of interest, and now we try to support more community energy developments, but of course there we try to also push, let's say, we try to boost the transition of the transposition of the framework that is going to be quite, you know, a catalyst for the initiatives to be able to take action.
Yeah. Thank you, Antonia, for this clear answer. I have a couple of questions that are more practical in the Q&A, and I just, maybe you can have a look at it and type the answer to it. Antonia, I think they're directed to you. And in the meantime, I just want to finish off, Alex, with you, because the code of conduct that you have developed is also about how to deal with projects that are initiated by bigger developers. Of course, there are some people who say we should do everything in a cooperative form, and then there are people who say that's not realistic because we need the big players as well. So can you say a little bit about how you can do renewables right, even when you have to deal with maybe a big player?
Sure. In one of Antonia's first slides, you saw the big division, a big energy company with a wheelbarrow with money, and then the community democratic. And I hope, and I don't think it will be that way. And you see many energy companies in the Netherlands cooperating with an energy cooperations in the Netherlands and cooperating with an energy company, because developing some solar panels is very easy. But that's not the energy transition. That are not real challenges. Those go beyond that. That is to market the energy, to balance that to demand and supply. And that is so complex. And all those next steps, you can't say, hey, you make it democratic, go away with other companies and just democratic small groups. It is too complex for that. So definitely 99% of the energy production will be coming from companies, because it demands so much and such large investments and such incredible big projects. But at the same time, it's very good that our community is involved. Having their own initiatives are involved to that, and keeping those companies all the time sharp that they should do at the most best to deal with people around them. And that's what I like, that there are many cooperations done between companies and corporations. And that is, I think, the future.
Yeah. And also have, as a central or local government, have the right policies in place to also have conditions, for exactly. The bigger players. Yeah.
Demand that before you give a permit, that the company really does it at the most best to involve all the people around that and work together to develop it together, not on your own. And then, hey, this is our plan, say yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to have some best practices in your presentation, so we'll share them afterwards. And then I must say that we have come to the end of this webinar. Of course, there are many more issues that we can further discuss or touch upon. But luckily, we have a second webinar also planned on the 14th of March. It will also be about doing renewables right. So this is also your chance to give your input on what you think the next webinar should dive into. So we have a wrap-up poll that I just want to put up. And the question is, what do you want to learn more about in the next webinar? So I give you just a couple of minutes to answer this. Yeah, I think people can vote now. That's going well. Then I also see Antonia still typing some answers to questions. I hope that's working out, and otherwise maybe we can share them afterwards. I don't know if that's possible, but let's see. All right, the voting will close in 5 seconds. So cast your vote if you haven't done so. And then we're going to end this poll, and you can all see. So there's a lot of votes for how to tackle the energy crisis and what to do about the high prices. So that's really a big topic. And then, of course, best practices are really helpful. We had a couple of them today, but maybe we can dive in deeper. And also how to develop successful communication campaigns for renewable development. And we also saw this is still a big issue, to have education and awareness about renewables, and to also tackle a lot of myths around renewable energy. So with that said, we have some input to design the next webinar, so that's great. I want to really thank you as an audience for your participation, for giving us your input through the polls. We will discuss it and make sure to have a super interesting program for you on the 14th. And don't forget to put it in your agenda already. And I really want to also thank, of course, Antonia and Alex for joining us today and taking the time to give us some of your insights and experience. That was really, really helpful. And then I wish you all a very good evening and hope to see you again soon.